Crescent was a tuberculosis hospital, an asylum, and finally a prison. And they say there was approximately 40,000 deaths here.
40,000 people did not die at Crescent Sanatorium. 40,000 people were treated there. Bit of a difference, Sam and Colby. That's not a little discrepancy in the first 30 seconds that Sam and Colby have made there. That is a massive blunder where they have confused a very specific number, 40,000 patients treated, to 40,000 deaths. They haven't rounded any numbers up there. They've literally killed everybody on the admission register. So here we go, and this is on Power of Place Digital Live. This is a downloadable PDF file. Crescent Tuberculosis Sanatorium, Admiral Peary Hugh and Correction Road, Cambria County. Pennsylvania's anti-tuberculosis campaign led by Department Health Minister, blah, blah, blah. Read all of this yourself. Link will be in the description. We've got the address, who built it, and all of that good stuff. 40,000 patients were treated from 1913 to 1964. So tuberculosis is the main reason why people associate 40,000 deaths with this location, but a brief bit of research, which is important for paranormal investigators and ghost hunters, it changes everything really, doesn't it?
People estimate 40,000 people died here. People estimate 40,000 people died here. 40,000 people died here.
So within 3 minutes, Sam and Colby have turned 40,000 patients into 40,000 corpses.
There were so many deaths that they even had an incinerator on property.
Those corpses have then been incinerated in one singular incinerator, by the way.
Then they would spread the ashes of human bodies around the perimeter of the campus.
And then their ashes have just been discarded around the perimeter, like a P. Diddy party, just white powder being thrown everywhere. And then later on they say that all 40,000 bodies were carried through tunnels between different buildings and stations within this sanatorium. That's a really busy place for the afterlife. I mean, especially with all the people that actually survived there. So if you watch the Sam and Colby video, 8 minutes 41, 38 minutes and 1, 22 minutes and 44, 1 minute 30, this is where they just keep doubling down on this 40,000 deaths. 40,000! That's a lot of people, Sam and Colby. So they repeat the 40,000 deaths. They repeat the 40,000 bodies going through this tunnel. They also mention this murderer that goes by the name of Kallinger and his mattress death. We'll get to that. Oh, wait. And they actually confirm a demonic mimic. Confirm it. How do you confirm a non-human entity? I hope it's not with apps.
Crescent Sanatorium. Crescent was a tuberculosis hospital, an asylum, and finally a prison. And they say there was approximately 40,000 deaths here.
The most famous ghost here was a terrifying serial killer, Joseph Kallinger, who believed he was destined to become God.
So that opening description broadly covers the 3 phases of this building. Kind of accurately, but what's not so accurate is the way they describe the title of this video. And they've titled their video Demonic Encounter in a Serial Killer Asylum. Well, that title there is blending 3 different eras together, and it makes it sound like Crescent Sanatorium was just a home for serial killers. It wasn't. So this is the actual timeline of Crescent Sanatorium. Useful in determining dates and many photos. I will link this below. 1910, 1911. So we're not really interested in a lot of this, but you can pick out the entire history. So barn remodeled into a dormitory for non-patient male employees. Work started remodeling of a children's playhouse, children's house with a capacity of 122 beds. We'll need that for later. A chapel, doctor's cottages, 1950s units. Unit 3, chest surgery was routinely performed. 1951, an entertainment hall, auditorium completely renovated. Tore down the cottages, nurses' residence renamed O'Halloran Hall. Alterations were made to 4 large wards. All of that information does become relevant later. Now, I am no researcher. This is just basic research that I have done as if I was going to investigate this location, and the claims made by Sam and Colby and the host of the event and Selena Spooky Boo, it's all wrong. completely wrong. There are shifts in dates and times, and we'll get to it. So calling part of this sanatorium's history an asylum, well, it's sensational, but it's not too far removed where I can say that it's a blatant lie. Because the site did care for some people with mental illnesses and people with learning difficulties, intellectual issues. But Joseph Kallinger wasn't the serial killer associated with this era. It was never an asylum when Joseph Kallinger was there. In fact, he doesn't come into this place until it's already a prison and, well, he's a prisoner. So what Sam and Colby have done by saying serial killer asylum is fuse 3 different eras into one title to make it sound like a cool horror movie. This isn't a cool horror movie, Sam and Colby. This involves real people, real victims. Again. Well, she can make stupid noises, so can I.
40,000 people died here.
So the 40,000 death figure that they keep throwing up in this video, it's not mysterious. That figure actually appears through historical material that I've found on descriptions of the site. We've already seen it, 40,000 patients treated. In fact, the site says 40,000 patients were treated between 1913 and 1964. Not admitted and never seen again. Treated. That's the important word there, Sam and Colby. They were treated. And on this page here, which is pbs.org/video/Crescent/and remembering life at the San 6ZRGYQ. Crescent, remembering life at the San. Former tuberculosis patients are still haunted by their experience in Crescent, PA. So I watched that documentary and it confirms that people did actually die at Crescent. Tuberculosis was deadly back then, particularly before different brands of antibiotics were discovered and made. In fact, former patient Chuck Felton recalled seeing a man suffer a fatal pulmonary hemorrhage. I can't say it. Pulmonary hemorrhage in his ward. But acknowledging genuine deaths at this property, it doesn't make 40,000 deaths true. That's horrific. If 40,000 people died during this 51-year sanatorium period, then Crescent would have averaged more than 2 deaths per day, every day, without fail. Those numbers would have changed the documentary that I've watched, that I've linked down below. It'd have changed that substantially. In fact, you can even go to CambriaMemory.org, Crescent Sanatorium Medical Records, and you can check all of this for yourself. There it is. It's all there.
You get one more use of the word fart tonight, and then you're cut off.
Okay.
I've included that little clip there because this is yet again the site of horrific tragedies that Selena Spooky Boo is at, where she can't stop farting and talking about her farts. Talk about respectful, Selena Dookie Poo. Well, if you can keep making jokes about your bowel movements, so can I.
Right here that they used incinerators to obviously burn the bodies and then sprinkled their ashes around the sanatorium.
And by the clips, you can tell that they have mentioned the incinerator and the sprinkling of ashes on 2 separate occasions. They're saying this as fact. Strange, because I can't find a single reliable fact or document or historical support for this claim. I can't find anything for this claim in the Pennsylvania area. The Cambria Memory Collection doesn't mention it, or any of the detailed testimonies that I've just been bringing up on screen. Where did this come from? But what the documentary does describe as being collected and incinerated and burned is the contagious sputum and the materials used to contain it. So that's going to be clothing, blood-soaked rags, bedding, not necessarily people, is it? And that all makes perfect sense for a tuberculosis hospital. Of course they're going to incinerate everything. Burning infectious medical waste does not equate to burning 40,000 bodies. What the historical archives do say is that some patients who died may not have had their remains collected by their families. But the existence of an incinerator doesn't mean that 40,000 bodies were buried there. And even if they were, that is still not proof that 40,000 people's remains were just willy-nilly scattered all over the place. To make that claim, you have to provide some form of evidence, and I have looked and looked and looked. That evidence doesn't exist. And until it does exist, well, this is just folklore. but it involves real people again. And this folklore is being presented as history by both the venue and Sam and Colby. Sam and Colby and chums have taken infection control and turned it into a paranormal crop dusting. Just kill everything.
So you look, that's another tunnel system that leads to the church and what's really screwed up, the children's ward. They had 122 bed children's ward of how many of the children of the parents that caught tuberculosis.
Yeah, super sad.
Really? I mean, that's sad, and I recognize that, but we get to go in tunnels? For sure.
We're gonna definitely.
I don't know who that guy is, but he's a dick. That's so sad, with a big grin on his face, and then says, but we get to go and explore the tunnels. There is a serious lack of empathy from any of these large paranormal creators. So that 122-bed children's unit, it existed. I've already shown documentation for it. But the history of those children is far more complicated than the parents got TB. And it certainly does not say that 122 children died there. And if we look at the Crescent Sanatorium timeline, just again, for you guys, it says about the 122 children and a playhouse. Doesn't really go into any deaths, does it? What that document does describe is the place becoming a preventorium. More than 250 children passed through this place at this stage, and for various reasons. But the historical accounts that I can find only say that a very small number of the children actually contracted TB. Most had been exposed to it at home and were taken in to prevent the spread or to keep an eye on them. And some of these kids, because their parents were so ill, they were being treated because they were malnourished and underfed. Some stayed for months and some sadly were separated from their families for years. And here we go, medical records and treatment. State archives. Again, this will be linked down below. Department of Health. Early treatment. Drugs, preventorium, preventative treatment. Research came away, there were young children sent to Crescent Sanatorium, even though they did not have TB. In fact, even though Crescent once had more than 250 children as adults, only a few were active cases of TB. Again, you can read all of this for yourself. And this is where history is even more upsetting than the paranormal claims told by Sam and Colby and the venue. Former resident Harvey DeCaio described healthy children being isolated from tuberculosis parents. He remembered strict silence at meals and punishments involving being isolated in a cupboard or forced to his knees. Another former child patient, Audrey Sweeney, said that she was forced to work in the laundry while ill and described her treatment as torture. And you can find that on this Crescent Remembering Life at the San page, which is linked, Remembering Life at San, and watch more. This will get into all of this there.
Crescent is home to two known dark entities that rule over the other spirits. The first one being named the Creeper. The Creeper is interesting because it can appear to multiple investigators at the same time. It's known to stalk visitors by crawling on the ceilings of F Block, the children's ward, the chapel, but mostly the tunnel.
Now listen to Sam and Colby's language. Two known entities, dark entities that rule over the other spirits. And they describe the Creeper throughout the video as this 8-foot creature that crawls across ceilings and a non-human figure. And then there's the Mimic that copies human voices. And then it apparently separates people from their groups to terrify them. A bugger bugger. In fact, the Mimic is so scary that these idiots claim that it scares the other spirits. Where did they come up with this shit? The important question here is, known by who? Who? When was any of this ever recorded? Where is there any visual proof? Who's the named witnesses that have seen this creature, this Mimic, and where? Where is the earliest version of this story? Because I found it. So, through all of the official pages that I've been looking through, and you'll see most of them by the end of this video, there's a ton of them I've got open on my monitor, there is not a single claim of an 8-foot crawling demonic entity or no Mimic or some paranormal hierarchy run by middle management demons, I think. But here's what I can trace publicly, and this is where this story seems to have developed from. While this title is not currently available to watch in your country, I do have a dodgy Fire Stick, and on this dodgy Fire Stick, Season 4, Episode 1, Crescent Sanatorium, Project Fear are the earliest recollection of these tales. No historical document, nothing, they just seem to have made it up. but this was Project Fear when they were called Destination Fear. This is when they were obviously signed to a TV network as opposed to YouTube. And so that is November 2022, Destination Fear promoted Crescent with a ghostly mimic and child spirits. Project Fear later advertised Crescent using a demonic mimic spirit and the ghost of a serial killer. You can go to Project Fear's YouTube page and check their description for it, because that's where they describe the mimic, etc. Project Fear have made this up, and Sam and Colby have run with it, in my opinion, before somebody shouts at me. And then in 2024, there was a podcast went out titled The Crescent Creeper, described in its own material as a story based in haunted lore and a modern encounter claim. So this backs up my thought process. The Project Fear have made this up, and I found that here, and that will be linked in the description down below. In case you couldn't tell, I've put a lot of research into this. I've put hours and hours and hours into this. I've nearly scrapped this video twice because too many pages. So I can't prove that Destination Fear and in turn Project Fear made up the mimic and the creeper. Those stories may have circulated amongst paranormal circles before, but it seems that these are the guys responsible for bringing these tales to prominence. But the only evidence outside of Project Fear and YouTubers I can find says that it's folklore. This isn't centuries old documents though. This is recent paranormal folklore, as in it's been made up very recently by YouTubers and TV shows. And then typically, like the paranormal field tends to do, we've got to look at the way that it progresses. 2022, ooh, there's a ghostly mimic. 2023, it's a demonic mimic that takes the form of a serial killer. 2024, the creeper is invented and comes up with his own backstory, or somebody makes it up for it. And then in 2026, Sam and Colby add to the additions of the additions of the additions and turn this creeper and this mimic into two separate beings that rule the paranormal at this sanatorium. None of this is history, none of this is corroboration. This is just a franchise getting a larger cast. It's like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but with shit demons that can never be captured on camera. And the further through this episode that they get, and the more history that they seemingly pluck out of the air, the worse it gets for them.
Crescent became known for being haunted during its operation as a prison. Guards and inmates would report seeing apparitions of a man with no legs pushing a cart from Building 5. This all started when notorious serial killer Joseph Kallinger got sentenced to life in Crescent Prison in the late 1980s.
Joseph Kallinger was a real serial killer. His crimes were real, his victims were real, and turning his crimes and his victims into some sort of entertainment mythology for, well, clicks and views, and then conveniently having him be the demon. It's disgusting. So Joseph Kallinger and his young son Michael, they terrorized several families in the 1970s. And there are actually 3 killings assigned to Kallinger, but Sam and Colby call it 2 at some points and then 3 at others. They seem to be forgetting their own research. And one of these deaths is Joseph's own son, Joseph Kallinger Jr. So we look at the trial of serial killer Joseph Kallinger. At the age of 4, Joseph Kallinger was adopted by a severely abusive couple. He revisited this abuse on his first wife, who left him, as well as on his second, whom he married in 1958. They had 5 children. 3 of those children reported Kallinger's violence to the police. They later recanted, but while Kallinger was in custody, psychologists measured his IQ at 82 and diagnosed him as schizophrenic. Kallinger murdered one son, Joseph Jr., after taking out a life insurance policy on the boy. Jesus. The insurance company refused to pay. In 1974, Kallinger took another son, Michael, on a spree of burglary, R-word, and murder across 3 states. Joseph and Michael were arrested on the strength of eyewitness testimony, and the state of New Jersey revised its extradition laws to see younger Kallinger, who was being held in Pennsylvania, stand trial in New Jersey. So Kallinger was arrested in 1975, convicted in 1976. Crescent as a prison, corrections, didn't open until 1987. So no, he wasn't sentenced to life at Crescent Sanatorium or prison. His life sentences predate Crescent Prison by a decade. Is that nitpicking? Probably, but get it right if you're going to make claims in a paranormal video. And through research, we can get even deeper than that. We've got just the US law, Department of Public Welfare and versus Kallinger. And if we scroll down here, the most relevant parts are these, part 1 and 2, the convicted murderer and how long he spent in which location. A Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court judgment from 1990 records that Kallinger began serving his Pennsylvania sentences at Huntington after his 1976 convictions. He was committed to Fairview in 1977, stayed there for more than 10 years and returned to Huntingdon in 1988. And he was readmitted to Fairview in 1990. He did die at Crescent in 1996. But these court records, well, they suggest that his placement came far later than this video suggests. I can't find an exact date, and what I certainly can't find, the Kallinger was in cell 6. There is nothing to suggest that cell 6 was Kallinger's cell. Yet Sam and Colby claim it is.
Where's your cuffs?
Cell number 6 was actually where he stayed for 23 hours a day.
Joseph Kallinger's cell.
It said, look, dude, it says Joseph and his 12-year-old son Michael went on a crime spree.
So during my research, I looked into this 23 hours confinement, and that's not something made up. That's actually a real thing. And the Department of Justice later documented prolonged isolation at Crescent, including prisoners and serious mental health illnesses being held for 22 to 23 hours a day. But that general documented practice doesn't immediately align itself to Kallinger. I can't find any court documents, any prison records, or any obituary record that confirms that cell 6 was Kallinger's cell, or that he in fact died in it, or that it was permanent to him. It is just that printed piece of paper that Sam and Colby pick up. And this is the document. Again, this will be linked down below. No mention of Kallinger himself, but it does describe what Sam and Colby described there. And that is just me showing that I'm actually actively researching this case.
So the coroners say that he died of a heart attack, but that's not true. He actually died because he chewed a mattress and then choked on the fabric in this room.
So they say, coroners say heart attack, but that's not true. He chewed a mattress and choked on the fabric in his room. That's an extraordinary claim, because they haven't just claimed it, they haven't presented it as a rumour, they've said that was wrong. They actually say the words, the reported cardiac death isn't true, and then they replace it with this very specific death by mattress fabric, chewing, swallowing and choking to death. And here we are on serialkillercalendar.com. This is Joseph Lee Brenner, aka the Shoemaker, Joseph Kallinger. Murderer, and we're not going to read the rest of his crimes because he is absolutely disgusting. While in prison, Kallinger made several suicide attempts, including setting himself on fire because of his unaliving violent behaviour. Kallinger was transferred to a mental hospital in Trenton, New Jersey. Kallinger died of an epileptic seizure on March the 26th, 1996. He spent 11 years on unaliving watch. And here's his obituary from the Philadelphia Inquirer. And this obituary says absolutely nothing about this guy choking himself out. Now, there are earlier claims that this was a way that he attempted to unalive himself much earlier in his sentence, but it's not what killed him. Not by anything that I can find online. He also tried to unalive himself by drowning himself and all sorts. The guy had lost the plot. But he didn't die from eating his own mattress and choking to death. Sam and Colby have actually argued against fact and recorded testimonies and made up their own story to present as fact.
Greater! Oh my god!
He believed to be greater than God.
Well, he wanted to be God. That's what his favorite part about killing? A lot. Well, not a lot. You only had 2 victims. Is that you now?
You only had 2 victims? How many do you want him to get? That guy, watching this episode, really pissed me off. But their victim count changes throughout this episode, and the recognised number is 3. Otherwise, he wouldn't be called a serial killer. A serial killer is 3 people minimum, not 2. And earlier on, they say 3. They actually say earlier there were 3, and then suddenly it's 2. They can't remember their own research. Now, while that might seem a bit nitpicky to undermine a serial killer, 3 people were actually killed, and accuracy is important to those 3 people that lost their lives. Treat them as real people, not Trivia Pursuit, but fucking serial killers. So basically what that amounts to is the Kallinger death and timelines are all, well, contradicted by fact.
Actually, no joke, looks like it's from like the Insidious movies.
Why would you bring up Insidious right now? We're in a freaking haunted hospital.
Because I just rewatched the trailer for the new one, and no joke, it actually messed me up. I've been having nightmares.
Jello, listen to me.
That's right, they have used this entire investigation using a real serial killer in order to gain a sponsorship from Sony Pictures for the new Insidious film. Now, a demon film sponsorship isn't immediate proof of fakery, but if I was a cynical man, well, it does create a bit of an editorial incentive, maybe? Just a bit. This video is being made to promote a movie about demons crossing into the real world. And it also promotes their video into the demonic coming into our world at the conclusion. What a joke. And I don't think that this framing is an accident or coincidence. You know, you look at the movies Insidious and there's, you know, sort of tunnels, darkness, noise and ambiguity and, ooh, scary. And then Sam and Colby, you're looking at tunnels and cold rooms and a hellish landscape. And they use these ambiguous devices that I've given up breaking down. REM pods, apps, you know, spirit boxes, all of that stuff. It's all ambiguous enough for them to twist to suit their narrative, to promote their story, to promote the movie. Or am I reaching a bit there? To me, this is less follow the haunting and the paranormal story as it is this haunting brought to you by a haunting. I should say Insidious, but it didn't sound quite as good.
About this is when this was a TB sanatorium, so they didn't just serve the patients. When people died, they would transport their dead bodies through these tunnels. So
Are you
we saw,
serious?
yeah.
Interesting.
So 40,000 dead bodies might have been through this tunnel.
How long is it?
Very long.
Half a mile.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Dude. Also, I didn't tell you, but I brought the little doll.
So, those tunnels that they described earlier and the tunnels they're walking through there, they're clearly very, very real. They connect the chapel and outer buildings to the main building through this infrastructure required to operate these massive institutions. The same things were put in place in the UK. Most of the asylums in the UK and the mental hospitals in the UK, they had tunnels underneath them because they were their own contained towns and villages. Some people called them cities. But these are utility tunnels. Some of them even had rail tracks running through them. These were to carry bed linen and supplies and heavy machinery and beds. These tunnels were used to transport goods in a straight line. Could bodies have been transported through these tunnels at certain intervals in time? Yes. These tunnels were used for many, many purposes. But the possibility that some bodies were transported through these tunnels does not equate to 40,000 bodies being transported through these tunnels. And again, I can't find any documentation to suggest that these tunnels were ever used to transport bodies. It could have happened, but there is nothing to say that it did happen. But 40,000 bodies didn't pass through this tunnel or these tunnels because there weren't 40,000 bodies. There were 40,000 patients. And the reason for that, I reckon, is utility tunnel doesn't quite slap so hard as corpse tunnel. Sam and Colby have invented a corpse motorway. What the fuck? Okay, and I'm not going to go through this again, but then we get to a Selena Spooky Boo moment where she's flipping cards and these cards confirm the story. Be fair, Selena did not narrate the 40,000 deaths, Sam and Colby did. She also didn't say about the scattered remains and Kallinger's mattress. That was all Sam and Colby. But Selena's card method does, with her psychic woohoo abilities, does confirm everything Sam and Colby said. We're at that point in the video again where Selena Spooky Boo has confirmed that her gift is absolute bullshit. Because she's agreeing with a fake story using her woo-woo. Selena Dookie Poo, sit the fuck down. So at certain intervals in the video as well, they say that it's 40 degrees Fahrenheit in this building, so it's cold, and Selena picks her cards because some cards feel cold in a cold building. Selena, go sign up for the Centre of Inquiry, prove your mediumship. You're wasting your train ticket. I do wonder if that text is hiding the fact that these cards are marked. Just saying.
It was during the time it was a prison.
So he brought evil with him.
I was going to say either with him or around that time. It could be anybody in that prison era, but that is actually the point in history when it turned haunted.
And there's where false history plays straight into Selena Dookie Poo's divination. She pulls a card that suggests the prison era, and then Sam supplies Kallinger and says that he was arrested a couple of years into the jail, and Crescent was supposedly turned haunted around that time. But Kallinger was arrested in 1975. Crescent didn't open as a prison until 1987. The card hasn't discovered history, the card has bolstered false history told by Sam and Colby. They discuss mental health, they discuss religious delusion, and then they reframe it as this huge theory. That's their words, not mine. The Kallinger was demonically possessed and then brought the demon into Crescent with him. Where do we begin? Well, there's no evidence of it for a start, and secondly, can we stop linking severe mental health illnesses to demonic possession? It's fucking dangerous. And so there's a section with the card where they basically flip over cards and they say the Crescent itself shuns people, and Crescent does not allow attachments to people. Crescent, according to Spooky Boo and Sam and Colby, has become its own entity that prevents attachments. And then a card flip is like, this attachment was never human, therefore demon. Where did they pull this from? Nothing external to this investigation has ever changed. Nothing in this investigation has changed. I saw no signs of anything demonic. Where is the immeasurable event for us to separate the spirit of a dead prisoner to a demon? Where's the meter for that? It's just a card being turned over and twisting the story to fit that card's narrative. And then, of course, we've seen this before. Selena flips over a card. That card doesn't match what they are trying to say. It doesn't match the narrative that they are trying to spin. And they say, oh, but demons are tricksters. They say that spirits can lie, that the mimic can lie, but the mimic's getting closer and is telling them to stop. Oh, this is dog shit. Basically, Selena, through turning these cards and then saying that demons can lie, makes her claims impossible to falsify. She's covering all angles. She gets a hit, it's correct. If she doesn't get a hit, the demon did it. So Selena turns over a stop card and she interprets that not as stop what you're doing, which is the logical conclusion to run to. She interprets it as an entity warning them that they're getting too close to the truth. What? So according to Selena's Spooky Boo's experiment, yes means yes. No means that the mimic is lying. Stop means, well, carry on, because you're getting close to the truth. And a contradiction in the cards that she's randomly turning over means the demon did it. There is no card that she turns over with these explanations that says that any of their premise is wrong. It's designed to fail. It's designed to show them as correct. And then Selena invents a ghost called Jonesy, who's a good-natured ghost and all of that. So at least she hasn't done what she did at the Hinsdale place and just make up an entire backstory of unalivings and murders and child death. Go you, Selena. Maybe you've learned.
You? The mimic or some shit? Who? What? Can you ask?
Garrett in the tunnel. He hit his head.
Oh, it's my head.
What's that?
That's right. That tall man walking through a low-ceiling tunnel hits his head, and the cards confirm the mimic did it. The physical event is real. He actually banged his head on the ceiling. It's on camera for us to see. He reacts, boo-boo on his head. But the cause of that isn't him being tall and in a tunnel. Selena's like, yep, the mimic did it. Bullshit. Basically what Selena has done by turning over a card is an accident in a tunnel. An accidental little bop of the head has become an assault a demonic entity. They don't even take into account that he's just tall and there's a tunnel.
Never.
Spirit can use this EMF energy and communicate through like radio sounds and just crazy noises in general and sometimes speak through it. It's insane. Are you ready?
No, it can't. Or not, no, it can't. If we're going to be fair, there's no proof to suggest that that is true. These things are crudely made with hot glue and little circuit boards. They cheaply made, 3D printed and sold on for an absolute fortune. So the Spirit Bridge comes up with the words P, infants, madness, prefix, company, methodology, transfer and surgical, and then there is a full sentence. So they connect madness to the asylum. Fair. Infants connected to the children's ward. The word P somehow is funny to children, but then prefix, company, methodology, transfer and surgical, they just throw into whichever building it will closely align to. But apart from prefix, most of this is just ghost hunt talk. This isn't a conversation with the dead and controlled responses. This is just an enormous word bank firing out random words based on EMF, which is not linked to the paranormal by any documentation I've ever read, and it's accompanied by 4 people just trying to make it relevant.
Amateur.
They're saying like amateurs.
We're not amateur.
Yes, you are.
So this recorder was actually banned in the 1970s because every time that they would use it, it would play back and capture voices.
Sam? What did you just say?
So this recorder was actually banned in the 1970s.
So we get a direct claim from Sam. The DR60 was banned in the 1970s, was it? Because it captured voices, did it? This is Kenny Biddle at the Skeptical Inquirer, and I will be linking this into this video description as well, reviewing the holy grail of the EVP, the Panasonic DR60. There's a link to the video there, and then there's sort of this little write-up. The Panasonic DR60 IC audio recorder was released in 1998 and is one of the first digital dictaphones. The reason that people use this is because, well, Zach Bagans started using it, I think. This unshielded microphone is so bad that it makes up noises. It was a design flaw. Now, the rumour is that this thing was recalled because it talked to ghosts in 1998. That was never the case. It was an unshielded microphone that produced god-awful audio quality. It wasn't recalled. They just stopped manufacturing it because it was crap. But Sam says the 1970s. It was built in 1998. A recorder can't be banned 20 years before its invention. How stupid. Unless those tunnels also have a portal that does something to time and somebody's thrown one through the portal, or Sam's lying again. And let's just put this out there. Bad digital recorder is not a ghost voice. It's the recording of a bad recorder. There's this whole thing about them feeling sick, and they're like, yeah, but we were told people feel sick, and fair play to them. They have acknowledged that talking about or being told about people feeling sick can make you feel sick in that area. That's fair enough. Now, they also claim that F Block was where the criminally insane or the mental health units were. I can't find any documentation of that, but they say, I think. And the fact that they are so unsure here that they actually say, I think, but the DR60 was banned in the 70s. That the tunnels were used for 40,000 corpses, that there were 40,000 corpses, that those 40,000 corpses were sprinkled everywhere. That's all fact-based, but I think F Block was for the criminally insane, or for the... There's no proof of that, and he thinks that, but the rest is fact. It's not.
Sure does look like blood. Why is there water in it too?
Dude, there's red water.
Look at that. No, like, look how red this is.
This is like, it's almost like it's planted there. Like, what the fuck? This is to be frozen over. You guys saw all outside was frozen. They just had like a snowstorm. There should not be.
Red water emerging from old pipes, rusty pipes, is not paranormal. Let's just say that as it is. And then to claim that it should be frozen because everything outside is frozen, it's a bit of a stretch when the very beginning of this video, your mate's talking about water dripping on his head.
Why is so much water falling on me?
So no, it's not frozen, is it? And they also say that it's 40 degrees Fahrenheit earlier on in the video. Well, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe my conversions are off. That's not cold enough to freeze water. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius or 32 Fahrenheit. 40 degrees is just cold water. It's probably in line with your fridge, not your freezer. As for that red water, well, rust. Rust is red. Orange, brownish, reddish orange. That was bright red. Maybe it was toilet cleaner. So they use a device, and the device says words like become alive forever, rule dead, feed 5. And they are like, yeah, this is proof of a mimic. It's only proof of a mimic because of your questioning and the really stupid vague answers. That machine spits out words, and then these 4 work so hard to work those words into their narrative to make this thing demonic. It's brain gymnastics. And again, if they don't get a hit that matches up with the story that they're trying to tell, they just like, the demon's trying to trick us. It's absolute bollocks. So this investigation, it's not an investigation, this is an entertainment ghost hunt and it's still crap. It's really frustrating because Crescent contains a lot of documented history, and the documented story is far more important than this crap. It's far more important than the demons that they're making up. This history is horrible, and they've got to add demons to it and mimics to it. For example, in 2013, the United States Department of Justice concluded that SCI Crescent's use of prolonged isolation on prisoners with serious mental health caused serious and obvious harm. There's your horror story. The real world. Why make up all this other stuff? And according to this, the US Department of Justice findings, don't want to show it on screen because there's prisoner details and stuff. I don't want to be showing stuff in recent memory, but more than 100 prisoners on the prisoners' mental health roster spent several months in isolation. Roughly 24 of those spent years in isolation. It's also worth noting that fewer than 10% of the prisoners were in isolation units, 2 of the prison's 3 successful unalivings, and 14 of the 17 attempted unalivings during the period. It is horrific, but there's fewer than 10% in isolation. Only 2 people actually successfully unalived, and there were only 17 attempts in the entire time. But the report goes on to describe trauma, extreme paranoia, depression, psychosis, self-injury, excessive force, and inadequate treatment. And it concludes with practices that violated the 8th Amendment and disability law. This isn't haunted house marketing, this is documented institutional failures affecting real human beings, and then other people have come in and added demons and mimics to it. And this sanatorium era isn't just a horror story. These were people's lives, but some former patients, and you can find their testimonies online, they remember friendly staff, they remember friendship, they remember recovery. Others remember missing their families from separation. Others remember fighting these really scary illnesses that were killing hundreds of people. Some people remember punishment and abuse. And it's important because the true history of this place doesn't fit the paranormal narrative. It wasn't just cruelty and death, it was recovery, kindness, public service, and yeah, there was institutional harm. All of that is far more important than the mimic and the demon. And all of that complexity is why that this building deserves more care. This history deserves more care. It certainly deserves more than 40,000 people died here, were chucked through the tunnels, were incinerated and then dumped on the grounds. So what survives the historical checks? Well, Crescent was a tuberculosis hospital. It treated tuberculosis patients. It did later operate as a state hospital and then a prison. Children did spend time there. Children did live there. People died there. Unclaimed patients were buried nearby. Joseph Kallinger did eventually spend some of his time there, and he did die there. And there is documentation that supports that the prison did harm mentally ill prisoners through prolonged isolation and just completely inadequate treatment. So what doesn't survive this Sam and Colby treatment? Well, 40,000 dead patients doesn't. 40,000 dead bodies travelling through tunnels doesn't. Human ashes being scattered all around the perimeter. Kallinger being arrested after it became a prison. Kallinger attempting to eat his mattress to choke himself to death and then dying from it. The DR-60 being banned in the 70s. Nope, it wasn't made until 1998. The non-human mimic. Well, no, it's only confirmed by Selena turning over cards and then trying to twist it into her own narrative. Oh yeah, they actually confirmed the mimic with a balloon as well, but I completely skipped that bit because I had nothing good to say. And the reason that these types of places work is that these paranormal creators, they can turn a story of uncertainty into certainty. 40,000 patients becomes 40,000 dead. There's an incinerator on site. 40,000 people were incinerated. Utility tunnels become corpse routes. Prisoner with epilepsy dying from a seizure becomes he chewed his mattress until he killed himself. People reporting on a mimic, Project Fear, become a non-human leader of the paranormal at this place. Why does this matter? Why is this important? Well, 40,000 people have been disrespected. 40,000 people. A lot of these people recovered. A lot of these people went home. They built careers. They raised families. And they've been turned into 40,000 ghosts because treated doesn't quite have the same effect as killed, burnt, thrown. So, I am Beardo and this channel is Beardo Get Scared, and I'm going to be doing more and more of these deep dives into large paranormal content creators, go into these historic buildings and completely butchering it. The paranormal deserves better investigation. The paranormal deserves better investigators. And the living and the dead, they both deserve better. Let me know your thoughts on the comment section down below. Much love to you all. Beardo out. If you have enjoyed this video and you're enjoying deep dives into paranormal locations, if you like debunking videos, ghost hunting videos, this is the channel for you. Please consider subscribing, dropping a thumbs up and leaving a comment down below.